Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to introduce Katarina to you all. She has a long-standing relationship with us in the Sustainable Places Research Institute. Katarina was one of Cardiff University Distinguishing Visiting Fellows, and she came in 2011 to us in the Place Institute as part of our strategic relationships that we have with her and with Umeå University in Sweden. And then on top of that, Katarina is a member of the International Advisory Board of the Place Institute. Katarina made her name initially in the seminal work that she wrote with another political scientist called Bill Lafferty on Agenda 21. And even though many people have researched the governance of Agenda 21 since then, that work, it remains the go-to place to understand how it is that actors in governance contexts at local level took up the issue about how it is that they were going to address the promotion of sustainable development at subnational and regional local levels. Katarina has a background in forestry and then got poached over to the dark side to political science, and is now a professor of political science in Umeå University, working on environmental policy and administration. I can't summarize all of her career because it is too long, but I can say that some of the work that she's worked on includes some very in-depth and detailed work on the Water Framework Directive in the European Union context, and also looking at water management and issues around nature and water protection policy. And she's also run a very large program on the mountain regions of Sweden, and is regarded as one of the exemplars of best practice about how it is that you do interdisciplinary work, drawing in people from various social science disciplines and also from ecology and forest and natural resource management. So we're really pleased to have her both as part of the Institute, but also to have her come here today to give us this lecture.
I'm very pleased to be here again. Today I will be talking to you about actually a little bit similar of the work I did on Local Agenda 21. I didn't realize that, but actually the topic is quite close, even if it's now narrowed down to collaboration or collaborative governance, and what that can help us in terms of reaching sustainable practice. I haven't done this alone. My two colleagues, Therese Bjärstig and Anna Zachrisson, who are both associate professors, have been working hard with me on this project. So a lot of the analysis is joint, but also we should remember that it's a joint work. Why collaborate? What's this collaborative governance all about? Well, there are lots of good things that can come out of collaboration, and I've tried to list some of the prerequisites, but also the potential outcomes of collaboration and why it would be interesting to do. Of course, we have these complex problems of environment and climate and all sorts of threats that require interdisciplinary and practical knowledge from a lot of different fields. So we need also joint solutions to those problems. Collaboration can also be a learning endeavor. But people who don't know so much about what the others know can get to learn about their own environment, but also other people's views on it, and to foster engagement. Sometimes collaboration is a way to actually devolve power, to get civil society do things that the state is struggling with and trying to solve. They need more support from other actors. and bringing in new knowledge, also local knowledge and practical experience to the solutions. Mobilize funding, for example. Some actors might have assets that are required. New ideas, anchoring decisions. It's a way of democratizing environmental work in a way. And also become more effective solutions since the knowledge is brought in, the appropriate knowledge. But there's also a reason to collaborate when there are conflicts and when different actors perceive problems in different ways and need to talk about it. So these are some of the sort of background to why we were so interested in what collaborative governance can bring about in the north of Sweden. And I looked it up on the way here. We have a focus on Sweden's mountain region, and it's actually 8.7 times bigger than Wales. Only that dark part that we label as the mountain region. So it's vast territories we're talking about. It's towards the Norwegian border, and it's highlands up to 2,000 meters, and with some forest, but the more you get up, the less forest, of course, and the less trees. And this region is particularly conflictuous, you can say. It's a large size of Sweden's land area. But interestingly, Stockholm is far away, the capital is far away from this region, and some of the conflicts that happen in this region are also political conflicts, you can say, of who should decide over this region. It's got enormous natural resources. There's lots of mining going on there. There is forestry. There is reindeer husbandry. The Sami, the indigenous people of the north, are living in this area. They were there from the beginning. And there's high land pressure from all kinds of land use. And this is creating conflict hotspots, especially with regard to, well, I would say there is a center-periphery aspect here as well, because much of the people living in the bigger towns, they like this region because it's wilderness for them. You know, they can go there and recreate, and they want it to be preserved and protected. They want big national parks and protected areas, whereas the people who live there, they see it as their workplace. This is where they get their living from. I mean, they use this land in many different ways for their survival. So this creates, of course, conflicts between different interest groups. For example, tourism versus reindeer herding. Hunting is also contested. Who is allowed to hunt and how much and which animals and so on. There's a lot of discussion about that. Fishing as well, you need permits, and of course, tourism industry is growing, so this is also creating conflicts. Hydropower, I didn't even mention that, but much of the electricity in Sweden comes from this area, from water, hydroelectric power. And now wind farms are being built up in this area as well, because there's heavy winds and of course it's a remote area, so might be less conflictual in a way, but there's still people living there, so this also creates problems. And for all of these conflicts, collaboration is seen as a solution to bridge the conflicts. So in this project, we had a lot of research questions, as we always do as researchers, and some of them are more to see what is there, because nobody actually knew who is collaborating with whom and what are the patterns and are they overlapping. What is mandatory collaboration according to legislation, because we have a lot of that, and what is happening in a voluntary way, like Local Agenda 21 from the ground and up. We also wanted to know who is leading this collaboration. Is it the state, or is it local actors? Is it different businesses and so on who want to do this? Are there regional variations, and what does trust mean in this respect? How does trust between especially public and private actors influence this kind of collaboration? And finally, the key question: do collaborative solutions lead to more sustainable solutions? So we started with the literature, and there's a vast literature in this area. A lot of it is interdisciplinary, a lot of it is assembling ideas from different other literatures, everything from political science, planning, etc., sociology, and lots of ideas from different disciplines. And we could list some reasons why collaborative governance would happen, and how it would vary depending on different factors. So these were some of the factors that we started out with, and that we were looking for and trying to use as explanatory factors for what we found. And the last one I should say a little bit about, because of course collaborative governance is a general word, and we were looking for both more stable collaborative governance, that is formal, legally founded, but also what is happening more action collaboration to solve particular problems. And I will get back to that later. Just a few words. I think most of you know what governance is about, because it's a very fancy word, or very commonly used word. We use this to explain particularly whether the collaborative governance was brought about from the top by the state or from the bottom up. And we also defined it as having to be both private and state actors. Of course, you can envision lots of market collaboration going on to make more profits and so on. We didn't look at that. Since we are political scientists, we are interested in how the state is steering these kinds of things as well. So far, this project is actually finalized in terms of funding, but we still have some analysis to do. We have mainly so far studied the emergence of collaborative processes, and we are now proceeding to look more detail into the outcomes. But I will give you a glimpse already here of some tentative conclusions. In terms of material and methods, we used lots of different material. We did interviews, and we studied, of course, the legislation and the different programs from different organizations and different state agencies. And there's a lot of them in this region. A very complicated governance structure, I would say. And as you can see, we also did interviews, both with the county administrations who are responsible for the governance of the overall coordination, you can say, of this region, which is here abbreviated as CAB, County Administrative Boards. But we also examined particular collaborative projects, and I will come to those. One way of distinguish in different kinds of collaborative governance is to look at whether they are more action-oriented, whether they are organizational collaboration, more stable between organizations for longer-term perspective, or whether it's driven by policy concerns from the state to achieve more integrated solutions. And I've got the where we base this from as well here. We listed, going through all the different public agencies, we found a lot of such collaborations. And as you can see, they range from the normal master land use planning to developing the national environmental quality objectives, which are very important in Sweden. We have 16 of them. One of them is called Magnificent Mountains. And of course, that is for this particular region. There is also a mountain delegation collaboration between the county administrative boards up in the north that has been in place since 1997 to resolve conflicts and to also try to streamline what the 4 county administrations are doing in this area, because previously they tended to work quite differently, and that created problems in the region. And then there are more specific mandatory forms of collaboration, for example, relating to the reindeer husbandry planning, where how to resolve problems or conflicts, particularly between the reindeer grazing and the forestry operations. There is, of course, nature protection consultation, Natura 2000, water management, all these different obligatory consultations are taking place, and wildlife management delegation is also really important for the hunting. So all of this is statutory and mandatory, and of course the actors in the region, they participate in these kinds of consultations and collaborations. And then we found another set of more voluntary forms of public-private collaboration that were instigated from different organizations, both from the state and also from others. Give you some examples. One of the biggest national parks, which is actually a World Heritage Site, Laponia. It's probably bigger than Wales. It's really huge. And that is now run by the Sami in collaboration with the authorities. So it's changed completely the agency's way of working. So they're actually working with the community now, and the community is in charge of the management of this big area. And there's also a lot of other voluntary collaboration for particular aspects of natural resources, as you can see. And we looked at how, whether these are more action-oriented or whether they are more organizational or more policy-oriented. And as you can see, we could then find that there are patterns here. Both of the mandatory and the voluntary collaborative arrangements concern nature protection. They can concern water and fish management, reindeer herding, and also getting access, for recreation, for example. And snowmobiling is a big thing in this region as well, to try to avoid deep tracks and so on. But the voluntary, they tended to be more about the reindeer herding versus forestry conflicts. Also destination projects, which we are put in citation marks because it's, you can say it's tourism-oriented projects to get people into the area. So they try to have a lot of entrepreneurs to devise interesting activities and so on. And local development projects. Those are voluntary. The mandatory are the hunting and wildlife management, which have to be because there are legal structures for that. And there is also mandatory for mining. I put that in parentheses because the collaboration is almost absent. It's more like the state decides. So I could say absent collaboration is really around issues like energy and climate issues and mining in this area. We didn't find any collaborations in this on those topics. And when it concerns the kinds of issues and the functions of collaboration, we could see that the bottom-up collaborations were more action-oriented, sometimes also organizational, more stable organizational collaboration, whereas the top-down collaboration was usually organizational or policy-oriented, but there were also action-oriented ones. They are complementary, these top-down or bottom-up or mandatory or voluntary collaboration. They are complementary in many ways. And sometimes you find that the voluntary collaboration happens because the mandatory has failed in a way. That is the case, for example, with the reindeer husbandry, which have had enormous problems with forestry. They are speaking different languages and they don't agree on things. So they have instigated some new voluntary collaboration based on GIS and so on that has helped a little to get the more learning and understanding between the different sides. And you can also see that action collaboration happens when government policies have failed. So the actors from the ground up are taking this into their own hands. In some areas, you can say there is more bottom-up and action-oriented collaboration, and that is particularly the less contested issues where there are win-win solutions, easy to grasp. And the state support we found was really also very important to explain much of this collaboration which is happening from the bottom up, because there is money from LEADER, from LIFE and so on, and a project which is a Swedish project, local nature protection, where the state is giving money to the local municipalities for nature protection. And this has been a really important program in the mountain area because the municipalities there have very little resources, and with the extra state money they can actually get some things going. It's a joint funding from the municipality and the state. National state, that is. Of course, the actors have different roles here. We could say that many of the local actors are the implementers, and we could see a very clear importance of dedicated personalities, because there were more collaboration in some areas. People were talking about, oh yeah, it's that woman or that guy who has actually driven all these new collaborations. But we could also see that organizational collaboration could provide structures for action, and that policy collaboration could also be seen as a way to handle conflicts, such as the wildlife and the fishing, in a more formalized way, when people can't decide who is allowed to use this area. And the county administration is brought in when there is conflict, when there is low level of trust between the actors, between the private and the public actors, and also when there is need for financing, because the county administration can always they can help channel funds from LIFE and the local nature protection and so on. And also when a long-term strategy is needed, the local actors felt that the county administration could help them to provide a structure for the collaboration in a longer term perspective that they weren't actually able to do themselves, because they needed a third party, so to speak, in the local setting to structure the discussions and facilitate. We could also see, well, I've already said that the state maintains quite a lot of power over much of the collaboration that is ongoing, not all, but much of it, because the local actors are dependent on this funding, for example. But a practical problem that is rising, and which I think is common in all rural areas, is that there are lots of sectorized approaches, lots of different government agencies coming into the same area and wanting different types of collaboration, but there are so few actors out there. This is a very low density populated area, so in some villages there might just be a couple of hundred people, and many of those would not be able to collaborate, too old or not really active anymore. So some of them will have a very heavy workload. Particularly this goes for the Sami people who have the reindeer husbandry, and they have difficulty coming in at certain times of the year, for example, to go to meetings and discuss things. We should also remember that the distances are it's really far between the villages, so just meeting up can be cumbersome. We also scrutinized all sorts of bottom-up collaborative projects, and we did this by asking all organizations, I think it was like 30 or more different organizations in this area, of what kinds of collaboration is going on that you know of. And we got almost 1,000 different suggestions, and then we delimited those to the public-private collaborations that we had defined that we were interested in, and we looked at how, and we also took away those that were overlapping the same project that many had reported on. And we came down to about 245, and those had been going on for about a 10-year period. We did this survey in 2014. We found that there is quite a variation across the region. You don't know where these counties are, but I can tell you the county they are from the north to the south here. So Norrbotten is in the very north, above the polar circle. Västerbotten, where the polar circle is just touching, and then Jämtland is a bit further down, and they have much more pressure from, especially from the large cities, because it's easy to go there, and they have very nice ski slopes and things, so there's lots of people there and lots of mountaineers who come there. So a lot of the projects were actually in the southern parts, and Dalarna is the very south. There's also collaboration going on across the countries and with the neighboring countries, Norway and Finland. So we came to quite a few, a couple of hundred projects going on in this area. And then we looked at, what are they actually doing? And as I said before, we looked at the different types of issue areas that they were engaging in. And many of these bottom-up collaborations were the kind of win-win, easy things with little conflict, so to speak, like getting more access to the area and recreation and so on. We also studied who was the lead for those collaborations. And as you can see, it was actually voluntary organizations, most of them. but quite a few also the municipality was leading these collaborations. So, and the third biggest was municipality and voluntary organizations together, whereas private companies and universities and so on, they came really far down. So it's mainly these homestead societies, hunting societies, all sorts of voluntary organizations for particular issue areas. We could see that the mountain delegation that I spoke about before, which had been instigated by the county administrations to try to streamline a bit the way of working, they were very important here, and because they helped to actually get to avoid conflicts, especially across the county borders, since the county administrations work in the different territories, and for example, the reindeer herders, they would cross these borders. So it's important to get the same kind of policies and so on for the region. And we also found that the reindeer management delegation was really important, not only for reindeer management, but also for lots of other issues, since the Sami are involved in the region all over. Collaborative groups for nature protection was more varied. It existed only in 2 of the counties, and you could explain much of this by the pressure, the socio-economic pressure on the land, and how many outsiders are coming in really to the area, especially in terms of tourism. Maybe I realize that I can skip this, so you might not be so interested in the regional variations, but I can get to what I wanted to say here about the level of trust, which is really important for how you would strategize for collaborative arrangements. And if you divide this by social trust and official trust, social trust is between the stakeholders. It's that you actually believe that other stakeholders have important knowledge that is worth taking into account, and that you also have a great faith in that they will work with you in a good way to find a solution. Whereas official trust is that you do the same with the state public officers. So depending on if the trust is high in both respects, both with the public officers and with the your other interest groups and so on, you would have different types of strategies for collaborating. So if in both areas the trust level is very high, then you can just discuss and confirm. Whereas if in both areas there's a very low level of trust, then you have to negotiate, because there are very different interests here. And then similarly, the other 2 boxes, facilitation would be if there is trust in the public officers that they could actually bring about a good solution, but the stakeholders are in disagreement. And consultation would be if there is very little trust in the officials, in the public officers, and they need to legitimize their decisions and get opinions in and show that they are listening. And we could see that this is central in all collaborative governance, that negotiation is really important when there is distrust. And in this mountain area, as I told you, many of the interest groups are very much against each other and discussing. all the time and are not in agreement. So negotiation is being used more and more nowadays. And it used to be previously, some 10-15 years ago, the county administration was mostly working with consultation, but that didn't solve the problem, because people thought that, well, they will do what they want anyway, you know, they're just bringing them in to listen to them, but then they do what they had already decided. So there is a tendency of going more and more into negotiation, but also into facilitation to bring stakeholders together who have very different ideas and are conflictual, where the public agencies can actually help to create a more stable solution. And of course, bottom-up collaboration is facilitated when there are high levels of trust among all stakeholders. That's quite obvious, but it's interesting that we could see that actually when there was high level of distrust, that it was also a possibility that there would be more collaboration, because the different stakeholders wanted to defend their own interests and wanted to discuss with the others how they could defend it. So it's not, you know, as simple as you might think. We also found that the different county administrations, of course, use different strategies in different situations, but also that different public officers have different strategies. So some work almost only with consultation, others work almost only with negotiation. So this varied both between and within the counties. So it's a very complex pattern, and it was shown in the interviews that it was important to use the right strategy, because that could actually increase the trust over time. So it would be easier in the future if you use the right strategy, and that's obvious if you consult and just do what you decided. That will actually take away the legitimacy for further collaboration in the future. So what does this all imply for collaborative governance? Well, it's important to consider the level of trust when you initiate governance, and that interest groups would collaborate both with when they trust each other, but also when they want to mobilize financing, and also even when there is conflict, as I just said. So the big question then, does collaboration lead to increased sustainability? And we measured this in our interviews by a lot of variables. Some of them were social sustainability, which is increasing the level of understanding between groups, but also, I should say, I have them listed, the different variables here. Equal distribution of benefits, respect for different cultures, and for local communities' life support systems. That was some of the variables that were counted in social sustainability. And for ecological sustainability, I think you all understand that, but it's maintaining the natural ecosystems and heritage and minimizing pollution. Various variables for that. And economic would be viability of enterprises, and also of generating prosperity at different levels of society. So different variables that would measure that. And we then asked them, is there more sustainability from your collaboration? And this was the 39 projects that we had selected randomly from the 245 that we initially had, where we had done interviews with all of those project leaders, and asked them also to assess the whole situation. And as you can see, in all the aspects of sustainability, they said that this was helping them. It was more of it. Only one said, well, there's worse on economic. There's two said that it was worse on economic, but that was because the expectations were so high that this project would create new jobs, which it didn't do. But otherwise, it was generally a very positive picture. And then we asked about how these sustainability aspects were combined in the project. And as you can see, the majority, about 40% of them, had all three dimensions in them. Only social in 18%, and only ecologic in 10% of the projects. Only economic in only 3% of the projects. So they tend to be more of social and ecological, as you can see. But they were combined to a very large extent. And then, of course, the different collaborative projects had different particular goals as well. So we asked, did you actually reach those goals that you had set out? Yes, no, partly, or sometimes they didn't know, or they weren't there from the beginning, so they couldn't assess it. And as you can see, the majority were very positive. This is a tricky question to ask, because many of the projects have never been properly evaluated objectively in any way. So this was a personal assessment, and we know from the literature that you tend to overestimate the success, because you need to justify why you have put in all this effort to the collaboration. So it should be taken with a little bit of precaution, but I think still, I mean, it was very few projects that didn't meet at least some part of the goals. Some 18% said that they had not met the goals for different reasons. So just summing up, we can see clearly that the demand for collaboration has amplified over time. There's more and more of it, both mandatory and voluntary has increased. But we can also see that lack of trust and unequal power relations remain an inhibiting factor in these collaborations in certain issue areas in particular, whereas other areas are easier to grasp and to have a win-win solution. We saw that leadership is important not only for the bottom-up projects but also for the county administrations. That some were more took more initiatives than others, and same with the municipalities, and that funding still plays, of course, an important role especially in the action collaboration. Generally, you can say that collaboration is rewarding, yes, as I started out with. There are positive effects, particularly on the social aspects of sustainability, which might be expected because collaboration is about social connections. But it's important to see that actually that works as well. It is costly. Many of our informants mentioned this, time and resources and skills and so on, but it could also result in more trust, which helps for the future. We also saw that a lot of the collaborations are overlapping, and it creates big problems for some of the smaller communities and the interest groups that don't have so many representatives, so they have to go to everything. So that is something to keep in mind, and some of the solution that we have suggested for the public agencies is that they should actually integrate their thinking more across the sectors and not go to the same community, 4 or 5 different sector agencies go with the same kind of request for collaboration, because that won't work. So it's important to ensure that the collaboration also will result in positive outcomes, because and not only information and discussion. So that's what I wanted to say.